Write down a sentence, please. Or keep it in your memory at least. Never cooperate with anyone who angrily judges you. Never cooperate with anyone who angrily judges you. The fact that you cooperate with someone, which we'll explore, when you cooperate with someone who angrily judges you, means many things are wrong with you. For one, it means that you have a belief, that is, your intellect is responding to what they say, and you're taking it as true. You're taking it as being true of what you think you are. This means you believe that you're a rascal, or you believe that you're a hypocrite, or you believe that you're lazy, or you believe that you're unkind, you believe you're cruel. When you answer someone who angrily accuses you, it means, of course, that you, in your reaction to them, exist on the same level as the angry accusation. Therefore, you're doing nothing more but keeping the foolish game going, which you take great pleasure in, because to get mad at someone who gets mad at you makes you who you think you are, someone who must protect himself against accusations, against slanders. Now let's see what it means to not cooperate. You're accused of anything whatever. And whatever you're accused of is either true on a certain level or it's untrue. It makes no difference whether it's true or not, what they accuse you of being. The important thing is that you don't stay on the level, remain on the level of the angry accusation, the slander, the judgment, whatever it might want to call it. The important thing is that you don't reply in kind. But even if you don't do it verbally, you'll do it internally, mentally. You get emotional about an accusation, which is very easy to get you emotional here, any of you. All one word or one frown. So when you answer in kind to that person, you're keeping to the accuser, you're keeping your own false position in place, which means that you're going to have to endlessly defend and protect yourself against accusations, against judgments. From now on, when anyone judges you, accuses you angrily, because there is such a thing as positive criticism, is there not? If someone says it in the right spirit, which is so rare, very rare. From now on, when someone accuses you, judges you, you're to remain wide awake at the split second that this judgment comes toward you, so that it doesn't fall on where it usually falls, where it always falls, which is on your self-protective devices, defenses. You'll give yourself a shock, a healthy shock, if the next time you're accused, slandered, bawled out, you sit back and remain inwardly and outwardly silent and don't cooperate with what was said to you. Only when you refuse to cooperate consciously can you begin to understand what this whole business is all about. Someone says something critical about you, to you. At that split second, you're going to watch to see how impulsive, compulsive, immediately, emotionally, you rise to defense, or you rise to tears, tears being your particular defense, or you rise to anger. Now I want to branch off and get very specific, because there's 10 ways we could go on what we've talked about already, but I want to select just one of them in particular, which is you not cooperating with your accuser, mostly because you want to save yourself, rescue yourself from your own wrong reactions, but because you want to be free of him or her. Every time you get angry over an angry accusation, you reward your accuser, don't you? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
You reward him or her. That is what he wants. He's not so dumb. She's not so stupid. They know how to get you, how to make you cry, how to make you bristle up in even a small way or a large way. And they'll go as far as they can to get a sense of power over you, of course. You are not going to harm yourself and that other person anymore by simply falling down underneath the accusation and starting to explain yourself. You will not explain yourself anymore. When you are accused, you do this and watch how you begin to get a completely different view of how you can handle all of life. That one little incident of how you handled it properly will begin to give you that faint feeling of how you can handle all of life. And by the way, you'd better understand that the accuser is in you as well as in that person out there. If it wasn't in you, his accusation couldn't touch you. You'll begin to feel that there is a part of you that is truly independent of all accusations. Your refusal to cooperate consists of one thing, essentially: silence. You not that we want to deliberately confuse someone to get a sense of power, and you have to watch that. Someone blasts you in some way, and they're just waiting to get their pleasure of their agitation out of your agitation as it strikes you back. They're just waiting for it. You watch the utter consternation in their face when, after striking back at them for first striking you for 1,000 times during your marriage or friendship, you say nothing. You just stand there and sit there and look calmly at them and say nothing in return at all. At the very start, you'll have to practice one center at a time. The first one being conscious that you're not going to use the mouth center verbally to talk back to them. So you can put a brake on yourself and say, you're doing this consciously, not mechanically, but because you're working on yourself and you want to understand and be free of accusations, slanders. You're going to you could even go like that as a sign to your physical center that it's not going to start blabbing. Yes, but, how we do it? We've all done it. You'll find that while that center cooperates, and keep your mouth shut a little bit, your feelings won't. Your intellect won't. It will keep going on. But you can begin to see how one center can stop, but the other one can't, because it's been used to it for all these 20, 30, 60 years of you blasting back when someone blasts you. You will get to the point where you realize that if you can stop one center from its mechanical, harmful reaction, then you can also stop another. So just like that. This is not suppression, you understand? This is work. You're not going to answer back. You're going to remain verbally silent as your first step toward total wholeness silence. You practice that for a long while, and you'll go on to the other centers, and they will not react as you usually do. But back to the other person, because you're in daily contact perhaps with this person that you're working with, someone who accuses you. At the same time that you watch his or her discomfort at your refusal to be the old person reacting, at the same time, see, he's waiting for when you're going to get mad. See? And he keeps going at you, keeps nagging at you. When are you going to get mad? Little things, slamming the door, the whole business. At the same time, you notice his change of state, which is frustration, because he's not getting ego pleasure out of hurting you, hurting your feelings. It is most important for you to watch your own discomfort. This discomfort is very important for you to have. You know why? Because the comfort you had before in striking back covered up the fact that you are always uncomfortable. When you refuse to strike back, you then, by watching yourself, become aware of how uncomfortable you've always been all your life with other people, those you live with right in that same home. So your awareness of your uneasiness is very important to observe too. And then you can see that, go on from there and see that you're not a slave to that. Let's get back to the original point. All this you've heard is to apply, not to listen to, but to apply, starting with a break perhaps. Never cooperate, never go along with them, otherwise you're simply cooperating with his insanity or your insanity. The insane part of you says, okay, let's have a fight. Which makes you both miserable. This is much deeper than you can imagine. Take it one step at a time and no longer cooperate with the other person's neurosis. And the time will come, get this, when you'll no longer cooperate with your own angry accusations towards yourself, which are going on constantly, which is, by the way, why another person can get you, because you're already getting yourself. And you love to get yourself because you love the agitation of it. You love the fiery feeling of seeing how sinful you are, how guilty you are. I wonder if you have any idea of what a drastic thing this is. How deep this is. How we're going right into the very center of ourselves to change actually the kind of a man, the kind of a woman, the kind of a human being that we are. It can be done. Is there any comments or questions up to this point? Yes, we'll discuss it, then I want to say something else. Please.
Vernon, isn't part of the struggle here with what you just said the fear of being defenseless for a few minutes?
Yes, very good. Mm-hmm. Afraid that the other person is getting through to us and we better throw up a wall before he knocks us down. Let the other person do his worst. You've been told that. Let the devil do his worst to you. Go ahead. Scream at me all you want. Accuse me. Holler at me. I'm sorry, dear sir or madam. I'm all through staying on your level. I'm tired of it. I'm going to do something different. Now, do you think you'll be able to do it? No, you won't be able to do it. Because you'll be asleep at the moment it happens. What does that mean? It means you prefer being your defensive or offensive person to being the nobody who is somebody at last, without thought. Who are you protecting? You know who you're protecting? You know who you're protecting. You're protecting a confused, angry, hurt, scared human being. Why do you protect a mess like that? Why don't you let the attack go on and on and on until you begin to see from yourself that no matter how fierce the attacks of other people or yourself toward yourself, that the attacks have no power whatever over who you really are. And you see that by seeing that your false nature, how easily upset it is. How easily it gets uneasy. Comments, questions? Yes, Alan. Or Randy, excuse me.
Since I only get what I asked for in the first place, I had to let this person accuse me? What did I do to provoke this attack in those cases?
I was going to say you don't even have to provoke it. People will just attack you. Because I've experimented with this, exactly what you're talking about. One person would twist what I said and throw it back at me. And I never knew how to handle it.
Yes.
And I found a way that you don't need to. With this particular person, I'm not caught in his trap, ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chuck?
Neurosis must find a target.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Are you aware, as Randy pointed out, that in one way or another you were asking for the attacks you have by remaining on the level you're on? You had better search thoroughly what level you're living on. And if you're living on the level of imagination, that imagination will lie to you and tell you that you're okay. It will even tell you that you're very strong in dealing with people. People don't tell me what to do, that sort of thing. You're scared of everyone, aren't you? And you hide it very well, don't you? Oh, not too well. You stop cooperating with the devil. The devil in you cooperates with the devil outside of you. Refuse to go along with it, both inwardly and outwardly. Try sometime remaining silent instead of getting angrily defensive and offensive yourself. Just try it sometime. And even if the first 100 times that you do it, it makes you confused. That confusion is marvelous. Do you know why? Because when you used to attack and defend, you knew what to do, right? Strike back. You call me a name, I'm going to call you one. You bawled, whatever you did. You knew what to do, don't you? Yeah, I know what to do, man. You're not going to dominate me. You know it. When you don't do that, you don't know what to do. Now you're confused. That confusion is the valley of the shadow of death, through which you must pass for a long, long time until your not knowing becomes complete. So that when someone attacks you later, you don't know what to do. But your not knowing what to do is knowing what to do, which is to do nothing. Because there's no one there to do anything. Clear? So stay in the valley of the shadow of the death of your false personality, your surface self. Stay with that. I'll tell you, to live with confusion is marvelous. You're not living with it now, you know. You're living with knowing what to do. You've got quick answers and quick schemes and quick little tricks. When are you going to run out of them so that you can begin to suffer in a different way? Suffer from not being the man, the woman who knows how to handle bad people, who knows how to get ahead in life, who knows what to do with yourself. The more confusion you enter, the healthier you are getting. The more perplexed you are as to what to do, but knowing that you're entering this, a small part of you is knowing that you're deliberately entering the valley of the shadow of the death of the false self. The small part of you that knows this will guide you through the valley, which has endless volcanoes and pits and vines to get entangled in. Ask yourself, how consciously confused can I get today? That means awareness of your perplexity. Then don't do a thing about it. The minute you try to do anything about your perplexity, you go right back to you again, who's always got the fast answer. What have your fast answers given you, ladies, gentlemen? Bops on the head, huh? We'll continue with this until the break. Then we'll have the break and I'll start in with something else. And when I do, I will tell you that you'll have been very fortunate to have come this morning for what you're going to hear after the break. May I add something before we go to it? You know, we have a lot of fun here. We go to the opposites of a light spirit and seriousness, rightly. We go back and forth as it happens naturally and rightly. I want to make a request of all of you. Something that happened last night brought this up. Please don't interrupt me by making a joke when it's not your show. When you can see me talking about something, even though I'm talking lightly and smiling and there's a lot of good humor in the room, please don't jump in and interrupt while I'm talking. That throws things way off. Even if you get a laugh or don't get a laugh, that's not the point. I'm trying to accomplish a certain thing by being light at times. And when you interrupt to be a comedian, that throws everything off, and I have to sit here patiently and wait for the right mood to come back again. That happened last night. Do any of you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Huh? And all of you were studying my face to see how I was taking it? So please don't leap in at the wrong time. When you see I'm not going on as I'm going out on now, when people are talking, then you can jump in if you have something to say, but not while I'm talking, please. You cooperate with people who angrily judge you because you want to continue their good wishes toward you, their friendship or whatever toward you, and they don't have any at all. People who angrily accuse you, whether you are right or wrong, it was right or wrong in the accusation, they're not your friends at all, they're your enemies. The fact that they accused you angrily means that they are in a state of spiritual slumber. And any person in a state of spiritual slumber is your enemy. No matter what he does for you, what she does for you, they're your enemy. Don't go around with enemies. That's foolish. They'll take advantage of you. And you know, I vow to you, the wickedness, if there's such a word, of our heads is incredible. We can be betrayed 500 times by a smiling, pleasant man or woman, betrayed finally 500 times, and get hurt and get bitter, whatever our reaction was. And the 501st man or woman comes along, and because you want to believe his or her act, you want to believe that he's pleasant and nice, you know, not a bad human being, you walk right into it again. When are you going to stop walking into it? I'll tell you when you'll stop walking into it. When you no longer have self-pictures of yourself as being a reasonably nice, pleasant, kindly, perhaps, person. You want to believe in yourself, not in the other person. There's nothing to believe in either one of you. There's only facts to see that you have both polished your stage performance to the point where you can deceive each other as actors and actresses. You're going to have the courage to expose both yourself and that other person as soon as possible. This means that you're going to have to develop a small amount at the start, which is all you have, a small amount of conscious sternness. And when I say conscious sternness, what will happen if you practice it the first 50 times? You'll be mechanically stern and get a thrill out of it. Man, this is great. I wish I'd heard that before. I can intimidate people. This is what I've always wanted. They've been intimidating me. Now it's my turn. I said conscious sternness, which says at the same time to the other person, to yourself, knock it off. And if you don't knock it off, I'll boot you out. Get out of my life. I don't want you around. I don't want to live with you anymore. Remember, out there and in here at the same time. The devil out there is always the very same devil that's in here. Don't you forget that. When you remember it, then you'll be able to say consciously, you'll be able to rebuke the devil, which is anything negative. You'll be able to rebuke the devil, and you know what? He'll obey you. He'll toss his pitchfork will drag, and he'll go away, because he has been defeated not by you, but by the absence of you. Only, write this down, please. Only the absence of me can defeat the devil. Right? You understand that, don't you? Only the absence of me can defeat the devil. I can't defeat the devil because I am the devil. That's Vernon, that's Juan, that's Joan, that's Dorothy and Linda and Connie and Chuck and all the rest of us. I am the devil, and there is no other devil but me. When I see that, then something in me can see the devil in others and not be subject to it. Final comments before we take a break? Who's that, please? Yes, Chuck.
I just wanted to cover the, when someone does angrily judge you, and you do go through like a momentary period of silence, and they keep rebuking you, or they keep, putting you down or whatever, angrily shouting at you, would it be appropriate then to say, I refuse to communicate with you on this level?
That would be fine if you say it and stop there, but don't you explain the whole business.
Right there.
And you know another thing? You may have to do this, and you should, if it happens in the right circumstance, you may have to just get up and walk out of that house.
Yes.
It is proper to physically remove yourself from devils, and you had better get up and walk out. Oh, you're rude. That's what they want to call it. You get out of there. No matter what they call you, you get out of there. You're not going to associate with that kind of nonsense anymore. How many times have we covered this business of not associating physically with people who want to remain devils? Chuck, again, please.
Well, I was in a similar situation. Of course, I had provoked it myself because I wasn't doing my job properly, and I was getting hauled on the carpet for it. But unnecessarily, like bad language in his private office, and this I couldn't. I just kept my mouth shut and took it, and then. Of course, I had many, many different feelings inside. I wanted to punch him in the nose and do all this stuff. And I'm fighting myself at the same time, being very nervous about everything.
All right.
I just, when he was through, I said, are you through? And he said, yes. And I said, well, I have a class to go to. And I just left.
All right. You understand, of course, that if you are bawled out by the boss or anyone for doing something improperly, you have to have a good deal of honesty to see whether you did file those papers wrong or didn't fix that automobile properly, whatever the boss accused you of. Correct that, most certainly. And you can take that kind of correction consciously. Isn't that valuable?
Yes.
Don't you want to become a more efficient, intelligent human being? Therefore, if the boss bawls you out for something in which you were actually wrong, but he does it in a wrong mood, most certainly learn from it. Even if he rebukes you from his wrong emotion. So what? You can learn from it. See how honest we have to be? Yes, Chuck.
Our relationship is much better because it did go through a period of change and things did work out better. I improved in my efficiency and that helped him, feel
All
good
right.
about me also.
All right, just to state it another way, then we'll have a break. Don't feed the anger of your accuser. Don't feed it. That's what he or she wants. They get pleasure out of that. You are very immoral when you speak back on their level. You're feeding them the anger and hostility that they want to be involved in. You're feeding them false life. Don't you know it's wrong to feed other people false life? And if you feed it to them, you're feeding it to yourself. And you'll get poisoned. You will. You'll get a psychological tummy ache. All right. Review, very short. Don't cooperate with people who angrily accuse you. You don't have to explain. After many years of myself being led into traps by people, I got tired of it. And so I developed a marvelous technique, a magical technique, which I'm going to give to you, and you'll find it marvelous too. And as lightly as I put it, believe me, there's something serious behind it. Please write down a sentence. I'm going to give you a technique called the Themaswot technique. That, you can't hear me back there, Daddy? This is called the T-H-E-M, as, A-S, Wat. That's W-O-T technique. W-O-T. Now, Wat is an archaic English word, and also an old one. You're going to have to think faster. Now, I never want you to forget this technique. It will save you, depending on your present age, many, many years of being dragged into something you don't want to be dragged into. Now, underneath the heading of this marvelous technique, write the following sentence. Themaswot makes the suggestion, does the work, makes the decisions, and pays the dough. Themaswot makes the, what's this? Read it out loud. I want this exactly that way. Themaswot makes the suggestion, does the work, makes the decisions, and pays the dough. You don't know what I've given you yet. You wait.
Could you repeat it?
Themaswot, W-O-T, makes the suggestion, does the work, makes the decisions, and pays the dough. This will free you, ladies, gentlemen, of one of the slickest, smoothest, most outrageous con games that one human being can ever play on another. One lazy human being, one cunning, conning human being ever plays on another. Unfortunately, you'll have to give it up yourself before you see through it in another person. And it goes something like this. Let's have a party. The person saying, let's have a party, stops there. Waiting. What do you suppose he's waiting for? You to do the work, make the decisions, and pay the dough. Just a minute. Hands down now, dumbhead, when I'm talking. Don't you see how this connects with what we ended the previous talk with about remaining silent instead of being dragged into something? You watch carefully in your human relationships how lazy people who want a thrill will try to con you into doing something while they get the maximum amount of pleasure out of it and the minimum amount of work. And you have no idea of how subtle they can be. For example, have any of you ever belonged to a social club of any kind? Any kind of a club? And they wanted you to become vice president? You know why they wanted you to become vice president? They wanted you to do the work. You do the work while they dance. That's right.
Right.
And you fell for it. Why? Vice president of that group. Man, you've got a title. You watch again how people will try to drag you into something, hoping that you and a dozen other people will pay the money, make the decisions, do the work for you. You want the... Oh, do any of you do that? Of course, none of you do this, right? It's always someone else who does it to you. I've seen it in this room many, many times where, nothing is easier than making the suggestion, let's have a party. All right, fine, go to work. Refuse to cooperate with it and watch what'll happen. No party. Oh, I have to do something? I have to make a decision as to how many people will come? I tell you, you don't realize how important... I'm serious. Mm-hmm. And you know why I put it that way? Because you'll remember it better. Who ever heard the word "what" before? It's in the dictionary. All right, comments, discussion? Yes. Excuse me, Chuck now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what meant. Is it initials for something?
Well, use it the way I want it to be meant. Them as what? You'll remember it that. Never mind, don't get so technical. Feel it, feel it. Tom.
This goes back to something you said about we must all be as self-sufficient and responsible as possible. If we were, there would be no problem.
Correct. Sally.
This ties in with being passive. I've worked on this being passive, and it works.
You didn't get dragged into something?
Right.
She's actually beaming. Beaming Sally. People will make you feel that it's your responsibility to do this, And guess who's going to get blamed if something goes wrong? The person who dragged you into it is going to accuse you of fouling things up. And you're so dumb you don't even know you listened to him or her and got dragged into it through his suggestion. I'll tell you, write down the word gullibility is me. Right. The sentence, gullibility is me. This can happen in a marriage. Husband and wife drag each other in. Don't you think, dear, we had better? And then seven dots after the sentence. That indicates the pause, And then the wife or husband wants the other person. Yes, I'll make the phone call and get it started. That's what he or she wanted you to say. Remain silent and see what happens. She'll forget all about it. As long as she has to do anything, she's not interested. As long as he has to lift his little tootsie finger, he's not interested. They'll also appeal to your false sense of excitement. Something is going to happen. We're going down to a picnic down at the lake. Isn't that nice? And I'll tell you in this room, when you come to me with any plan, you had better give me a complete whole plan up to the point where I must make a decision, And some of them I have to make. Don't come up to me with half-baked ideas and just stand there and stare at me and want me to say something back to you. I have nothing to say to you. If it's something practical, like getting another meeting place, something like that, then I do have something to say to you. You're going to have to see the difference in yourself, for yourself. You're dragged into things, you know, because you don't understand what we've talked about this morning. Both times you're dragged into it. And you go a willing slave into these things, and you know what? You really hate it. And you wonder how you can get out from under that responsibility that you agreed to. We're teaching you to not get trapped in the first place so that you don't ask, how can I get out of it? You'll cease getting yourself into it. You are not here to save the social world in its parties. I'll give you a project, very definite project. You see if you can see even one of these little instances, even either in your relationship between now and tomorrow, or in two other people. See how someone makes a suggestion. Well, should we go to the show? Or what would you like for dinner? She doesn't care what you want for dinner. She wants you to make the decision so she won't have to choose between cheese and pork chops. Just watch situations in other people and in yourself. How nobody wants to make the smallest decision. Not the smallest decision. Tell me what to think. Tell me when to think. All right. You know the freest person in the world? A man in prison.
Yeah.
They tell him when to get up. He doesn't have to think about when to get up. The bell rings and you crawl out of bed. They tell you when to go to breakfast. They tell you how long to work. They tell you what to do during recreation. Everything is planned for you. Marvelous, isn't it? Except that you're in hell. You're in hell to the degree you refuse to begin to see your refusal to make decisions. Most of you in this room will not even take responsibility for asking a direct question. You fumble and fool around, and you come to a stop, and you pause a minute, and you start in again, and you stop, and I think you're through, and you start talking again. And incidentally, please talk or shut up. Isn't this awful? Isn't it terrible what's required of you? You're required to exert yourself, arouse yourself a little bit. Start using the brains God gave you to make small decisions at the start. Watch the eyes of other people in conversation, in social situations, and you'll see their eyes going something like this, like little timid sheep. I hope you tell me what to do, tell me what to think. Then if it doesn't please your self-interest, you say no. If it pleases your self-interest, you say yes. You've submitted yourself to the tyranny of the intellect, which has gone mad in yourself and in other people. I'll tell you, you're not going to wake up without getting shocked 50 times more than you're willing to be right now. You think this doesn't apply to you? I know you do. You know how I know you don't believe what I'm telling you? Because I know you're living in imagination. This doesn't apply to you. What do you mean? I live alone. I may have to make decisions about shopping. I go to work. I have to make 1,000 decisions a day. I'm not talking about the decisions whether to mail the letters at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. I'm talking about the decision of you to face your life as it actually is. How you don't even have the courage to stand up here on Sunday and expose yourself by muttering. You can sit back safely and say, well, if I was the leader of this group, I could do much better, for example. Now we can all slow down, can't we? Now you can let your mind be here completely. Not wanting to rush into a great profound lesson that's going to change your life overnight. Not even sitting here expectantly, wanting me to give you something. But rather seeing in your quietness, if you're quiet enough, that everything you want, everything you really need, you have right now. Right here as you're seated in this classroom, you have everything you really need, which you don't see because your noisy mind is clamoring for something. Among other things, your clamoring mind is clamoring for solutions. It wants answers. And it never sees even the barest of wrongness in demanding answers. It doesn't see, for example, if you want an answer to life, to your problems, you have all these problems, all these things going on inside of you. You're looking around, trying to find ways to ease the pain, to lift the burden a little bit, to get through the day. You don't even see what the burden consists of. The burden consists of your demand for answers, even right now, perhaps as you're seated here before me. You demand answers. That's your problem. And when you have that problem, then when the higher answers are given to you, because your mind is chattering, you can't hear, and you're disappointed. You look expectantly at the teacher, at the book, wanting them to tell you how to be happy, how to lose your tension, your anxiety, how to get outside of the madness of your own self-concern. And it never occurs to you that the seeking for the answers to the problem is the whole problem itself. Moreover, you don't want to see that your demand for answers creates the problem of wanting answers. You sit here or read a book and want me to tell you what to do, always hopeful that this will be the night when you finally understand it. Well, we've got long, hard work to do. So let's begin. Write down the following sentence. A free mind is too happy to criticize. A free mind is too happy to criticize. Let's see the hands of those of you who have critical spirits. Those of you who love to pounce on other people. You love to find things wrong with them. The more things you can find wrong with other people, the happier, in quote marks, you are. To catch someone else in a mistake makes your day, doesn't it? Well, not quite the day. It wears off after 30 minutes. Now you have to find someone else to criticize, someone else to scream at. Isn't it strange to all of us that we can never find and never have found any human being who is quite as perfect as we are? I never criticize myself. A perfected human being like me making mistakes? Inconceivable. But now you, of a lower order, how easily I can observe all these things about you, about which, of course, I am superior. Now, you want to know why you have problems. You want to know why everything goes wrong, no matter what you do or which way you turn. I'll give you a little tiny clue. It's because you have a critical and sometimes very viciously critical spirit toward the world and toward other people. A critical spirit is the problem. For those of you who don't understand why this is so, I'll explain. When I have a critical spirit, that is my false self, my artificial invented identity, wanting to prove that it exists by criticizing or, get this, or praising you. Criticizing another human being and praising them are exactly the same false move. Because then I become the criticizer and therefore superior to you, or I become the praiser, the flatterer of you. I give you compliments, and isn't that nice of me to be so good myself that I can recognize goodness in you? We're a pair of nice people, aren't we? Now you tell me the same lie, and we'll have it made, won't we? Only we won't. You're going to have to look much more deeply into yourself. You can start immediately to see how a critical spirit toward other people give you something to do. Listen to that. A critical spirit gives you something to do with yourself, and since there is a great amount of energy in sarcasm and in criticism, next time you're critical, you watch the energy in it. Since there's a good deal of energy in that, it gives this energy some place to go. Or rather, it gives this energy some place to waste itself, like precious water being poured right out into the desert, making nothing grow at all, but simply wasting the energy of the water out there, or wasting our own psychic energy in a critical spirit. Now, you do realize, do you not, that for every bit of sarcasm, criticism, disliking, and all the synonyms that go with it, every bit of it that you are conscious of, there's 99% more down underneath it that you're unaware of, that it's not acceptable to your images, or you keep it pushed down because you want something from that other person. I will tell you, there is great freedom, great happiness, real pleasure. You want pleasure? I'll tell you how to find real pleasure. You abolish completely, through understanding its false source and its lack of necessity, you abolish completely a critical spirit toward anyone or anything. Now, if a person who doesn't want to understand these things were to hear that statement, his response, among others, would be something like this: but we must criticize in order to improve. We must point faults out to people in order to make them better, or I might have to criticize myself in order to improve myself. We're obviously not talking about criticizing our daily work at the office or at the shop or at the farm. if we have any sense at all, we welcome anyone's criticism, which would help us to be a better farmer or better mechanic or whatever. But we're talking about something quite different. We're talking about you and I falsely criticizing even ourselves in order to get this false sense of self that we so falsely treasure. Suppose then we worked on ourselves real hard to the point where we had no self at all. When that self vanishes, which can be done, and which you must do, which is the purpose of this class, when your invented self, which keeps you so sick all the time and bewildered and lying, when this invented self vanishes, with it automatically goes a sense of criticism toward anyone. Because there's no person there who needs to confirm, affirm, or prove that he exists by criticizing, by comparing with anything else. So if you're not there as a critic, what are you there as? You're there as someone who is too happy to criticize, and in place of your former criticism, because you've risen above it, is a very, very clear seeing of everything. A seeing, S-E-E-I-N-G, that is not a part of what you observe correctly as being wrong. I will guarantee you, those of you in this room, if you think of crime, or you think of war, crime or war, two horrible things which insane human beings create. If you think of either of these horrors, I will almost guarantee you that in some way or other you will identify with them. That is, there is some part of crime or war which gives you a false pleasure. You like to talk about this war or that war, and you like to tell when you were in the army and you had a uniform and you rose from private to captain in 1 year. Or you like to tell where you were during a certain war and you were in the bombing of London. You get a certain sort of false pleasure out of it. Or in crime, you say, I don't rob banks, I don't do this or that, therefore I'm superior to the criminal. Try to see where you're comparing yourself with something that you call bad. And obviously, while war and crime is bad, it's a sign of insanity, of sleeping human beings, you're going to have to see it simply as a fact. And unless you see it as a very, very clear fact, it means that you are still part of war, and you're still part of the criminality. As a matter of fact, we are a part of the criminality if we're still in a state of hypnosis, of psychic sleep, of mechanical thinking. Did you ever stop to think that there is such a thing as being a psychological criminal? Don't you know when you criticize someone, when you hate someone, when you're violent in your emotions towards someone, that you're a criminal? And don't you know that crime that you commit inwardly is a crime against both yourself and the other person and against society? How strange. We plunder ourselves all day long, not seeing what we're doing simply because our minds are not clear, our whole psychic system still wants something that it doesn't need to have. I will tell you, seated here right now, if you could see it, you could sit back and relax and still listen to the talk if you wanted. You could sit back in an astonishingly different kind of a state that you are now in right now. Just now, because your attention is here on the top, you have suspended some of your emotional and mental activities, therefore they're not racing around. Your attention is more or less here. But you'd be able to sit back and see yourself and see the whole room and feel something and be something different than you've ever had before. And that state would be a non-critical state, because you would no longer be sitting there as someone who needs to criticize at all, because it gives nothing to you. There's nothing in it for you to feel superior to someone else, to compare yourself with them. As a matter of fact, when you see these things deeply, you'll never again compare yourself with anyone else, because there'll be no one here and no one there. So how can two non-existent people compare? That is when your mind, and your emotions too, are too happy to criticize. There's nothing in it anymore. And in that state you see the war, you see the crime, you see the insanity of the world, without being a part of it at all, without being a contributor to it. I'll ask you a question, all of you here, all of you listening to this tape. How much did you contribute to crime today? How much did you contribute to warfare today? Oh, I'll change the question. How many crimes did you commit today against yourself? You feel sorry for yourself today? You feel lonely today? Any of you feel that you don't know which way to turn in life? Why are you committing a crime against yourself? I might as well tell you, there's no place to turn to. There's absolutely no place to turn to. When you see that, you're free. When you see that, you're happy. Well, haven't you tried about 50,000 places to turn to? Huh? How many thoughts have you tried to use to make you happy? How many different kinds of exhilarations have you had that's going to give you the feeling that's going to perpetuate itself inside of you and make you happy all day long? It's all failed. It's been a flop, hasn't it? I'm telling you, give up. Give up trying to be happy. Give up trying to find a source of happiness, because every source of happiness that you create is self-created out of your own conditioning, out of your own belief that if you get this or that, or get rid of this or that, then everything will be okay. It will never be okay for you. It can only be okay. Nothing can go well with Dorothy or with Vernon or Juan or Joe. Can never go well. It never has. Why are you so falsely optimistic that tomorrow is going to be any different? And why, by the way, are you criticizing everything that seems to stand in the way of you attaining the happiness, the success, the popularity, or whatever you want? Why are you criticizing everything that stands in its way? You could have happiness if you cease to criticize, you know. And if you cease to flatter also. So, I highly recommend that you just give up trying to be happy. I recommend that you give up trying to be free. And when you thoroughly understand what that means, that is the giving up. Because you see the futility, the absolute futility of doing a thing for yourself, because there is no one there for you to do anything for. You can't make yourself happy because there's no one there to be made happy. And when you see that, you're happy. Or rather, you are not happy, there is happiness. Oh, you want to be happy. You don't want happiness at all. You want a thrill. You want to criticize. You want to win over that person. You want to trick him. You want to trick her. You want people to pay attention to you. You want people to give you the respect and the loyalty and the love you so richly deserve. You don't want happiness at all. You want your version of happiness. If you want your version of happiness, guess what? You'll get it every time. And it'll be the most miserable happiness you can imagine, as you now know and experience every minute of your day. Please give very careful attention to the key word of the talk tonight, the key word being criticism. You're to watch yourself very carefully from now on, especially the silent criticisms, which go on so fast and so frequent that we don't notice them. And notice how you're trying to build your kind of happiness by being critical of another person or of a group or an organization, critical of anything that happens to come along as a target for your barbs, your arrows. Try to catch yourself the moment these critical spirit starts to rise about anything. When you catch it, refuse it. There's a sense of criticism, of contempt even for other people fades. Your need to be someone to be happy fades. And when the person who needs to be happy fades, there is happiness. And it's very quiet, and it is. I'll tell you another thing it is. It doesn't have to work at all. It's just there. It has no place to go. It has nothing to get. It's just there. And you know it without thinking about it, without reflecting about it. Notice from now on how often you think about happiness. Why am I unhappy? How can I get happy? And you'll see that you're on the level of the intellect which can never be happy. It can only chase happiness. And as long as you chase happiness, it will elude you every time. Cease to chase it and watch what happens. You'll fade out. And as you fade out, all your misery, all your need to be critical will fade out too. And what's left is not you, but something that is not you, that is what your deeper nature has wanted all along. The reason that you come to this class.
Vernon, would you discuss indifference as the contrast of indifference to the lack of criticism?
Would you start over? Say it again.
Vernon, would you discuss indifference as a...
Discuss indifference.
Yes, as opposed to a lack of criticism.
Oh, indifference, one word.
Yes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't. Indifference. Mm-hmm. There is such a thing, I'll write it down. There's such a thing, if you wish, there's such a thing as conscious indifference, which is freedom. Don't you know how often you interfere with things? You want to interfere with them because you get a sense of authority out of it, or a sense of righteousness out of it. You want to interfere with something. Don't you know when you really understand sickness out there because you first understood it in yourself, that you are indifferent to it in the sense that you're free from it? When you're wrongly involved with war and crime, can you be consciously indifferent to it? It's very difficult for you to see, I know, and it's not easy for me to explain in words, that you're going to have to see all negativities without self-reference. If you have self-reference there, that, do you know who a war criminal is? A war criminal is someone who looks at the war and says, oh, isn't that a dreadful war? All those fine young Americans killed. We've got to form a peace committee and stop this dreadful war. He or she is a war criminal. She is getting something out of that war, a feeling of superiority, of righteousness. And she won't even see it the next week or the next year when she herself becomes part of a war, encourages it maybe. Because people in self-contradiction never see their contradictions. We're not talking about the kind of indifference which turns away. You first have to turn, I'll use another word, maybe that'll make it clear. You first must turn towards sin in order to turn away from it. Our own sins, not the other person's. I must first turn toward them, be shocked to see how prevalent they are, how they dominate me. You know what a sin is? Anything that's against you. A sin is anything that harms you, therefore the other person too, because the harm is equal. You know, don't you understand that the world is indifferent toward the suffering of the world? The world is indifferent toward the suffering it causes, which is a lack of love. There's no love in this world. None of you here are loving. You don't even begin to understand that you have no love in you, because you still want something from someone. You want your way instead of understanding with a capital U. You want your way. You're stubborn, aren't you? You fight, don't you? You get hostile when someone attacks your position, don't you? You hate, don't you? You're hard, aren't you? Oh, you're hard. Some of you in this room are as hard as a rock. I can see it on your face. And your smiles don't change anything. Some of you even have trouble smiling. It's a strain on you, and you don't feel it anyway. When you walk down the street, the next time you walk down the street, I'll give you a experiment to make, which will wake you up a little bit. When you walk down the street anywhere and you're passing a number of people, you look at as many people as you can, give them your attention as someone comes toward you. The mother, the child, the old man, the old lady, the middle-aged couple, whatever. You have plenty of time to study them without staring at them. You can study. That's part of your work. You study them. You look at the expression on their faces. You look at their manner. You can see their attitudes too, can't you? You can see their attitude with that. You look at them very carefully until you're able to see what particular area they are presently troubled in, which you'll be able to do with a lot of careful observation. That particular woman she's marching like a soldier straight down her ice. She's anxious about something. Maybe she's late to somewhere. She's didn't judge her time right, so she's late. Or there's that man laughing mechanically toward the woman, and she's blabbing his ear off. and he's pretending to listen, but he doesn't want to. He's under the pain of listening to her blab, or vice versa. So that you're no longer indifferent to the suffering of the world. This paying attention to it without identifying with it, without involving yourself in it, for heaven's sake. Don't you sympathize with anyone. That's just self-sympathy projecting itself out there. So that maybe for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, you are aware that there is actually another human being in this world who also has problems. This will break down the fence that your self-centeredness loves to dwell inside of. And when you see these other people, you'll see many other things. For example, that you can't do a thing for them, but you can do an awful lot for yourself. And as you cease to try to do things for other people, the more you do for yourself. Now let some moralist take that statement and twist it. You have nothing to give to anyone else but your own madness. That's what you're giving them. That's how you're going to help them. You're going to sympathize with that person who won't take responsibility for his own life. And you're going to take his responsibility away from him and destroy him and you too. So you get a feeling of pleasure out of it, and you also hate it. False morality always includes hatred. Moralists hate everybody. Do-gooders hate everybody. Kindly people are vicious people. Questions, comments? Yes, please.
We must study others. We must study others so we won't be indifferent to the suffering of others.
No, you're doing it for your own clarification. You're indifferent to them as long as you don't understand your own suffering. You know, all right, how many of you suffer in any way at all? Let's see the hands of suffering people. All right. Then you don't have anything to give to anyone else or to understand, do you? Isn't your own suffering so engulfing you that it's all you can take care of? How can you take care of anyone else's problems, including your children or maybe your parents or whatever? How can you help them where you could help them? There's not much you can do, small things perhaps. How can you help anyone until you've already helped yourself to the point where you don't need help yourself anymore? And where your help for the other person doesn't give you a thing. It doesn't give you anything because it can't give you anything. There's nothing to get out of it. There's no you who needs to get anything out of it. You've solved your problem. You're out of the trap. So that everything you do in connection with other people is spontaneous. And there never is any resentment in you, unconscious as it always is, unconscious resentment over doing things for other people. Think of some human relationship you have, anyone, any relationship you have with another person, and find out where you feel, listen to this, where you feel tied down by him or her. And if you feel tied down by someone, you do. What kind of a relationship is that? It's a trading relationship, of course. Where did you get your sense of what is good? It doesn't make you very good, does it? You'd better find that something that is not on the level of words. A goodness that it's not on the level of society. You know, you see the mother or the father or both of them beating that little kid as he goes along, they go along the street, slapping him viciously. What's your reaction to that? And if you have a wrong reaction, and they're strangers, you can't do anything there, and you shouldn't. Unless, of course, the child's life is threatened or something like that, but you'll have judgment where to do something, where to not to do something. What is your reaction when you see that that pair of sick parents slapping that little kid? If you have a wrong reaction to it, if you have any kind of a wrong reaction, which you won't know whether it's wrong or not, perhaps, if you have a wrong reaction, then you are slapping that little kid and making him cry. Right? Clear? Clear? Well, if there's something wrong with you, aren't you on the same level as slapping that child? You may not slap that child. What else do? You pout at home and intimidate your husband, your wife? Isn't that slapping that child? Can't you see evil is anything that hurts someone else? In 10,000 different ways we can be evil. Don't you see, don't you know that when you frown at someone, when you're angry at someone, that you are part of slapping every child on earth? Don't you know when you want that uniform, when you want that star in the window, when you want that pay and raise, that you're part of that bomber that drops bombs on that hospital over somewhere? You are responsible for the arms and legs being blown off of that old man, that old woman, that little girl. Was this too remote for you? You think you wouldn't do that? You are doing it. Your nature is doing it. And you have the nerve to call yourself courageous when you go along with this insanity. When you laugh at the joke about the bombers. Well, that'll knock 50 Nazis or Japs out. Boy, that'll do it. You don't know what insanity is, you know that? You don't know what insanity is because you're a part of it. You feel oppressed by the social system. You don't get the raise. You can't find work. If you feel oppressed by the social system, you're part of it. You can understand the social system and then have 5 cents or 5 million and not be part of it. You'd better find out how you're contributing to that poor, pathetic, and I'm using these words very deliberately, that poor, pathetic 6-year-old boy who gets slapped first by his sick mother, then by his sick father. If your mind is not free, you slap that child. The more outraged you get, you're walking with someone else and you pointed out how awful of those people to slap that child, you're doing it too. That's the criticism we were talking about, instead of the free observation and the judgment that sees what's going on and sees clearly the insanity there because you first saw it and cleared it out here. Questions, comments? We have a lot of time.
Okay, you see the guy, beating his wife or hitting a child, and if you get hostile inside, it's just you're becoming part of the madness when you should just see it and observe it and don't get involved either way.
Exactly. Oh,
I understand.
You could. It depends on particular circumstances. You could save a child's
fire to the fire.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's called self-righteousness, self-righteous judgment.
Because I guess in another situation, you could
Of course,
be doing
of
something.
course. All right, how many of you have hatred in you? You were child slappers. That's what you are. You dropped that bomb on those people over there in that other country. You dropped that bomb on them. You did, literally. You know what dropped the bomb? The level of insanity. The level of insanity. Joe may not have dropped it. Joan may not have dropped it. Your level dropped it. And caused all that suffering in the world. Yes.
Vernon, we can't make ourselves understand, can we? It's only the process that we go through. Understanding comes of itself, isn't that right?
When you get real tired of trying to make yourself understand and give up. Give up. Remember what I said? You can't find happiness. You can only give up trying to find it. When you give up trying to find happiness, you have it. As long as you try to find it, you'll create your pseudo-happiness, which will be anything. It can be anything at all. It can even be a cheerful manner, which is a stage act, for example. It can be false sorriness for how bad you are. And so you slapped your child, and so you buy him a candy bar to reduce your guilt, and you slap him tomorrow. You'll slap him tomorrow. If you ever have to make up in that way, you'll do it again. You won't do it again if at the time you do it, you study yourself doing it. You could actually, some case, depends on what you do to hurt other people, you could actually see your hand rising to slap your child, and you're beginning to work on yourself. You could actually see that. That's the beginning of the end of unjustly slapping that child. Yes?
If you see yourself do that, maybe you can't stop yourself, but that does break it, that starts to break it.
It begins to, yes, I should say. You're beginning to stand outside and be the observer of the hand and the emotions and all that coming up, which means you're no longer quite as identified with it. You're no longer quite one with it. You're beginning, you know what's marvelous? I'll tell you what's marvelous. To begin to see that you really, truly, now look, I'm going to use the word insanity deliberately, and I don't mean lightly now. It is beautiful, marvelous, sane to begin to see your total insanity. The time will come when you begin to escape. You'll say, my God, how could I have ever done that to him? What kind of a raging maniac could I have been to have done that to her? Then there's a lot higher stages than that, which you can simply remember on the level of simple, unattached memory, that it was done. You don't even say, I did it anymore, because that is still part of identification, will keep you doing it again or feeling ashamed over it, which means you're in time, see. The time will come when you will really see as clear as this wall that when you were that vicious wife to your husband, vicious husband to your wife, children, friend, whatever, girlfriend, boy, you'll see that the viciousness was maniacal. Is that the right way to say that word, Leland? Maniacal force that took over your physical body, took over your mind, took over your feelings, took over your life. This maniacal force, this frenzy, took over you in this present physical body and made you behave, what's a worse word than insanity? A psychopath. you'll see that you are taken over. And this is what we're trying to do with this observation business, this looking at ourselves to see that we're taken over. Even a little thing during the break, maybe you said something, dumb or whatever. Couldn't you have seen that and say, something stupid took over my mouth, my tongue?